Yes, I'm Greg, and I'm here to tell you that you are always near a shop. It's a talk in two parts. The first part is about the free Danish basic data, and bear with me while we walk through these different types of data you have here. I promise you, after you walk out of this tent, you are able to make or visualize spoken geography better than I am. At least that's the point here. And if I could just... I'm switching slides here, but not there. So, for the first part, it's about basic data program in Denmark, and which kind of data are free, and what we can do now. This starts to smell a bit, but what we could do since 2013, but which is more and more enabled now. And part two is about geography in life and law. And I'm very scared to see that Rasmus is here, so you can correct me about the law, but I'll talk about my understanding of how we have been speaking about geography. And the last part is bringing words to the map. And part two is generally about my little example of illustrating how easy it is to say, let's surveil anything up to 200 meters from any Danish company, and how this turns out to be, it's only 200 meters, it turns into, whoa, this is all of Denmark actually. Yes. I'm from a company called Septima. We're small. We started out with the free basic data. We are 20 employees now. We started out 7 guys in 2013. My daytime job is helping the government pull taxes out of all of you by making these data and some more into evaluations of property in Denmark, amongst other. So, what is this basic data? Of course, it's a program, because everything in government is part of a program. If it's just a project, it's not big enough, so this is a big program. And the first thing was agreeing, what is basic data actually? So we have various core information about individuals, about your property, about your business, about your address, anything really. And all this is the foundation of our society. That's why we call it basic data. But nothing makes the wheel turn round like money, so we had to, or they had to find out in 2012 that basic data is also financing. Because before the 1st of January 2013, most of these datasets were paid for by one styrelse, one entity of the Danish government, paying another styrelse to make these data, so a third styrelse could collect the data and a fourth styrelse could interpret it. So they found out, hey, let's save about 2.5 billion kroners a year by not invoicing each other. So it's also about financing. And this sounds crazy to anyone within data modeling, but they found out it's important to link data, or being able to link data. So when you tell, let's say, the 112 operator in Copenhagen, if you live in Copenhagen, you call the 112 operator, the first thing he sees is a map, and we then help them find out where you are. And then you say, I'm at this and this address. And until about 20 years ago, he would sit with a Krakskort, all Danes know this, and say, okay, you're in 117A2. But now we can link actually the addresses to the roads. That might seem like a big deal. You don't seem impressed. But now they can link the addresses to roads, and they know how to drive. And this is also how we link real property to addresses, to roads, and to other stuff. So it's linkability. Then some of you might know the idea that it was also about distribution. I was a consultant on a big consulting architect actually on the geo part of a big data distribution platform, which became a huge success, delivered on time, or maybe not, after the 8th revision or so. So if you go to datafordeler.dk, then you should be able to see at least some of these data. The idea was that we should be able to distribute it for free to the people also. But in my experience, most importantly, this is also about coordination. It is to ensure efficient, effective, and coordinate development. So we are actually doing some of the same stuff so we can work together. And all of this is important for us as users to be able to make what you will see later. But let's switch to which data was actually free. Yeah. So this is King Christian IV. He's throwing out money to the people to make them happy. And you can, at least that's my image of the government back in 2012, or the whole of the Parliament of Denmark actually agreeing on something, that free basic data was a good idea. It's the government throwing money out, or data out at the people, and here see me trying to grab some of it for myself and our company, and then you have different people from poor to rich who grab out for the money. And what did they throw on the street? They threw the data I had been in love with for half a decade back then. The most of this data I had produced in another company for a very lousy salary, and had good ideas of how to exploit them, but every time I tried to, I had a nasty dream about paying the 12 million to start up a project. So they shared geodata. It was the biggest amount of data released was the geodata part. So it's basically anything within geo that's not in defense. Oh, and the sea maps, because maps of the sea are used by big Danish shipping companies, and it would be bad for Danish business if we shared them with everyone. So it's geodata, it's technical maps, it's height models, it's hydro-improved height models and so forth. That's all the stuff we work with. Then it's company data. So it's which companies do we have in Denmark, and where do they produce stuff, and where are the main entities, where are the sub-entities, who's owners, and so forth. And then it's address data. Though they were already free. Sorry, it's my daycare. I just have to. Just a minute. They'll call her mom. It's address data, though they were already free and being distributed. So it's where are the different addresses when we say Frederiksberg and enten, where is that? And now from this year, it's also weather data. And actually, this is a real conversation between one of the partners in our company and me. So how can we exploit that lightning observations are now free? So if you want to look at lightning, then it's the amount of lightning and when it strikes and where it strikes is now free. So all this turned into what can we do now? Well, this is a collection of the Industriens Mænd. Now we can do private business, and everyone can start up what they want in their basement if they want. You don't need to produce 12 million kroners to be able to read the geodata that your tax is already paid for. You can enrich your own data sets. This is me calculating where water flows for an insurance company and for myself when I was buying a house. I don't want to live where the water goes, preferably where it goes from. And you can combine several different data sources. this is if a gasoline truck turns over. This is what we sell to the 112, for instance. When a gasoline truck topples over in the middle of a town, where should you protect water? So it's for environmental protection, and if it's gasoline, probably also for property protection. And since there's a lot of data, you can also do this. I put it in quotations because as a former statistician, I hate big data. It's not a word, it's not a thing. It's simply a big amount, but you can do real big data. We turn around, when we do a calculation on the Danish height model, we turn around 10 to 15 terabytes of data when we do one run of Denmark. So it's really big data. Then we should almost have had Rosa Lund here. Now the private initiative can actually try to take the risk in doing stuff without being thought up by some public admin guy saying, I want something. And that's why I could make this stuff you will see later. And then actually what's happening right now is we test a lot of ideas. And we create and sell, as a company we create and sell the added value. But before anything you had to do, you had to get permission, either go with the money, 12 to 13 million kroners to the government, pay for the data, or come with a good idea and they hopefully wouldn't steal it for themselves, but try to finance you. And then we get beta data. This shouldn't be a surprise for you, but this, when people work together, usually people actually behave rather well. They help each other. And there's quite a good story about the Danish address data being shit, but OpenStreetMappers helping with heightening the quality to around 99.9% good addresses instead of 95, because the rest, there wasn't any economy in making the rest better. Then you get, and this is the slide that probably will infuriate some of the public admin guys. Then the people will get better insight. I don't know if you can see it, but it's from the Quest for the Holy Grail, and it's communist peasant questioning if the king is right. And now we're moving towards the main part of the talk today, because it is the right of the people to question if the king is right. But before you had to pay, let's say, if it's my case, I use both. I use data for around 45 million kroners pre 1st of January 2013. I wouldn't be able to make what I've made with the surveillance camera oversight without paying upfront 40 million. And I can promise you, I wouldn't have done it if I were to pay 40 million. So the people get better insight, and that leads us to the next slide. We see this a lot. We gave them so much and now they're angry because it's specialist data. You need to interpret it. You need to be able to understand that some things are wrong, even in our most holy data sets, such as the Danish matriklen, who owns what. Things will be wrong. And previously we were protected by either lawyers or chartered surveyors who were able to interpret the data and see, oh, this is clearly wrong, so let's make it right, whenever a problem came. But now when you go to, let's say, Bolige.dk or one of the other real estate sites and you see something is wrong, then you start shitting your pants. And the sellers are angry and the buyers are angry, and actually it took me around 3 months of negotiation with the buyer of our previous flat's attorney to agree that my flat was to the right, even though one of 3 official registers said it was to the left. And people will become angry when they get inside. That's kind of the idea. But it causes a lot of frustration out there, and one needs to know that when calling someone and saying, this is wrong. And he'll just sigh and say, I know. Please kill me. Then to the most interesting part for today. Now you had an overflight of the Danish basic data, and we'll go to geography in life and law. Because we all walk around using geography every day, but vocally. So if none of you had the address here, my guess is you would have quite a hard time getting here. So we have to agree on where are we, and we use vocal descriptions for that. Sometimes we write them down, but basically it's vocal descriptions. So some of the earliest would be, or the most general would be, it's an hour to the east. And then people say, whoa, okay, if you're from the extreme northern part of Jutland like me, then you know it's about 60 kilometers to the east. But if you're in Copenhagen, you're going to walk the distance because an hour to the east, well, that's 4 or 5 kilometers at most. So it's interpretable when you use a vocal description. You might say, my property ends at the fence. Then you're lucky if no one moves the fence. And basically, the Danish property, real property, is in Denmark defined as the natural seeings in nature. So if the maps are wrong, that's the previous errors, then the charter surveyor would go out and say, but it says that your property ends by the stream, thus it ends by the stream. And we'll measure it now, and it's most probably within a few centimeters correct. But it's still, we still have parts of the property register that are predates today by a couple of hundred, if not 300 or 400 years. And it's quite a problem trying to digitize these things. Because when you digitize, then you have to, or you don't have to, but if you don't want to spend gazillions of kroners, then you have to make some decisions on who is going to cry and who is going to laugh. So my property ends at the fence, and then you have to walk an hour to the east, or maybe ride, who knows. Then there's another problem with how we do descriptions of geography. This is an old map of my home parish, a parish map. And to avoid having a one-to-one size map, we usually draw maps a bit smaller than the real scale world. And hence, when you have a pencil that is 0.5 millimeter wide, it suddenly becomes several meters in nature. So here we see a part of who owns what in Sindal. And the beautiful things about the old maps is that you can go in and see how things have changed. So, for instance, at some point, someone dared to build a railroad in the southeastern corner. So the whole of the town was moved down there. And suddenly, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a road drawn afterwards here, which the king stole from the people and said, now there is a road. And who knows if this road truly is 20 meters wide, as it is on this drawing. My guess is it's not, and I've been there. So, but the whole idea about how wide is a pen is that suddenly you get the brown descriptor in the right. That's the change of parish to another parish. If you live on the brown line, where the heck are you supposed to be? To the right, to the left, south or north? No one disagrees that this is the line between parishes. And in modern politics, you might even see a PDF scan of an ordinary pen drawn. This is the area you want to do something to, and then the poor guy sitting in the Technical Milieu office has to tell the mayor, but you have circled an area of 2 square kilometers, and the pen you've used to circle it with has marked an area of 2 square kilometers. What do you want to how much is going to be with this, within this? So that's another thing. And since we draw to scale, everything will have kind of a width on a map. The biggest problem is perhaps that words are interpretable. So here we have a monk writing down his drunk version of the Bible, and then he decides to suddenly put in, on the 27th day, he created the experts. And going through 7 or 8 or 10 of these types of monks, then it suddenly changed to this is what the Bible says. And every time you hear a word, then you interpret it in your own mind. So for example, I heard that the new law states that you have to wear your face mask in near the station. And then everyone says, that's a good idea. Of course it's a good idea, but what is near the station? Then I have some geo-nerds writing me, Greg, does the matriklen, the parcel register of Denmark, is that in 3D, or will any road passing under a station actually be on the station? And I'd had to sadly say to him, yes, any road or any path crossing a parcel in Denmark, which is owned by the Banestyrelse or DSP, is probably at least geographically near the station. Actually, you're probably on the station. In those parts I come from, where we don't develop that much, we mostly remove buildings. Probably most of the town of Sindal will be on an area owned by DSB. So words are interpretable, and that's just an example. So it's easy to say some things that sounds logical when you say them, but which become quite interesting once you try to visualize what it actually is. And words are free. So when coming to the next part, when Nick says it's only 30 meters from businesses, that can't be much. Then he's right. If you're standing outside the kiosk, then 30 meters is 30 meters. You can see. And if you have an office where I have on Strøget in Denmark, then you can see shops all the way down Strøget. So it's 30 meters from everywhere. And then you can walk a bit out of the town, and then it's still 30 meters because it's not shops. It seems to be businesses that just have to have deliveries in and out. And then you might say, oh, that really, Greg, that's not what he meant. No, that's not what he meant, but that's what he wrote. And that's what we will come to for my little visualization example here in the last part of my talk. So when Nick says, or any other, that's just because I was punked by some friends to say, how much is this? After I've did it in private, then some of the partners in the company say, you have to put this online so people can see, because we fight with this every day. Then we'll go to the last part. It's bringing words to the map. So actually visualizing what you say. And when Nick says 30 meters, that's not much, then Greg says, 30 meters from all businesses? And 30 meters from what? Is it the address? Is it the parcel? Is it the property? And if it's the property, which types of properties does this are we actually going to interpret this from? Because in Denmark we have at least, I was surprised before the summer holidays, that we have at least, I knew we had at least 3 types of properties in Denmark, or three different registers, but apparently we have quite a bit more than 3, depending on who you talk to. If there's a municipality, the tax property evaluators, or who you're talking to, but we'll get back to that later. But how much is this actually? And then these slides are for your convenience. I took the Danish businesses and the location. I'll just, if I may, take this. I took the Danish businesses and the location. They're free. I managed to grab a hold of all the 3 Danish registers of addresses and building parcels. And I loaded those into a huge database cluster that we have, or that's not true, we had it already on the cluster. But let's say I collected all these to see, is Nick Hækkerups right about not being far from, or that the data coverage is far from all of Denmark. And that's how we think when we do these kinds of analysis, if we're paid or if we're not. If we aren't, it's about trying to make the words into something visual or into numbers. then there's a lot of open source software that we use and that I used for this. It's a Postgres with the PostGIS extension. That is the most powerful. If you manage to write SQL, that's the most powerful combination you can do if you want to make anything with geography. It's so fast, and its planner, the SQL planner in Postgres, is so powerful that even if you manage to write just a bit of SQL, then you'll see a result at some point. Then I've used the free, also QGIS desktop GIS system. That's a geographical information system. And later I coupled it with the map server for serving it, and for that I used the g.ogr extension. But this is a software. You just download it and make something smarter than me. And then, as we always do, we take on the actual words when someone says, can't we do this, and how much is that? So I took all Danish companies, and they have a text address. So I have an algorithm that converts the text addresses into a real address, so a UUID to the address register. And then I coupled those. I even forgot to write that. Then I joined those. So I had the point of where companies are registered. And one could say, going to the illustrations later, that this is where the company lives. And usually you'll see these kinds of illustrations. This is the dot. And here Greg and his wife and his little daughter lives, and they don't move outside this dot with no area because this is their address. So that's the first illustration one could make. 30 meters from that, where the company is registered, they're allowed to film. But of course that's not what we mean. Everyone knows that. That's not near the station, that you're near the address of the station. So I did a special join to the parcels in the Danish matriklen. So I coupled all the points and specially said if you lay inside a parcel, then the parcel becomes the company. And then I got all the buildings on the parcels, because suddenly we needed those also. You'll see that later. And when I pressed F5, as you do in the editor I use, and wait for calculations, then I had to walk home and come back and drink some coffee and do my real daytime job, make some money, then go home, come back, and after about 3 days everything was joined. And now we could see for the island of Anholt, we could see how much is covered by Nick Hækkerups' wet dream of 30 meters. Actually, this is a little joke, because I put a map on Twitter saying, because people were wondering, how far is this, how many, it's easy to say, so how much is actually going to be covered, and I put a map of Denmark that was all yellow, like in all yellow. The 3 parts that wasn't covered was the island of Anholt, where I come from in Vendsyssel, where nobody lives, and some Natura 2000 area in Thy, where only cows walk around. But the rest of Denmark was basically covered in the first version of the map. And then, of course, I did some different types of visualizations as Nick started correcting himself with distances. And we'll go back to those later, because we'll see in a minute. Because let's take all the talk, and then we'll see the solution in the end. By popular demand, this turned into a website, because every time someone said, couldn't you just visualize this also? How about my area? I want to zoom in. Then I had to wait around 3 hours for my stupid one-time solution rendering another zoom level. So I took what we do at our place. I took map server, and I put it in a Docker container, just eating up chunks of data from the database, and made a slow version of kameraovervågning test septimer.dk. And then I was punked some more. So I tried to make it a bit faster by pre-generating all the data. That did actually make it a bit faster. But when you wanted to see the middle of Copenhagen and I had more than 2 visitors at the same time, then everything broke. So I split it again. And that's a little trick in geography. Actually, I think I've used most of the tricks in the book here. I split it into smaller areas and tiled those. And then it's actually quick enough, at least, to show. So what is actually what I made? Let's have a look, and I'll just talk you over what we can see, because it's nothing special. It's my eyes. Shoot, my mouse disappeared. I have 2 mice now, one on each screen. Den er i toppen, ja. Vi gør lige sådan her. Så kan jeg se den der. That's it. Okay. So let's see. This is... I can't even read my own words. I'll just have a look. I'll mirror from here. Just a sec. As we just talked about, you need to be, something needs to go wrong. It's not the version of the slides I uploaded to our server this morning, so the last 2 you have to bear with me. Keep changes. So, now we see the same. Nice. So basically before, actually you had the right to film 15 meters from a facade. And this is all the buildings in Denmark loaded, and then 15 meters from the facades are drawn with the yellow. And if we zoom out, you can see this is today. Not much. We can zoom down to Funen. So actually today with 15 meters, then these are the areas that are covered. And then we can switch to which areas are now covered by the new law. And then hopefully it will update. So if we zoom in, you will, funnily enough, see 2 types of shades: new areas and old areas. So we can try to remove before, and these are pure new rights now, scattered all over a small provincial town in Denmark. Sorry to anyone from Nairobi or where this is. These are new areas. So these are only areas that are extended, but who has got new rights? So anyone who were allowed to film 15 meters before, but are now allowed to peek just a bit more in your private life. How much is that? And that is of course more than the new areas, but new areas were not CCTV'd before. So now this is someone private getting access to film you. So these are the 15 meters subtracted plus 15 meters. So this guy down here is now allowed just this part more into the street. And if I turn to the technical map, then you can see that I actually took the buildings. You can see the form of the area covered by surveillance. You can see that it forms like the building, because this is only from the facade. I took the buildings on each parcel, or actually on each real property, and extended those with 30 meters, and then subtracted the 15 meters that they were supposedly already allowed to film. And then these are the extra areas. And I had a talk with Anders Kjærulf about this, and he said, where should I go if I don't want to be filmed? Then I funnily said, well, go somewhere in a park. And then I caught myself thinking, oh no, but the municipality is actually allowed to film if it owns the park. So please go to a park where someone private owns it, and you're allowed, well, wait a minute. So there aren't many places in Denmark, that's my point about this. There aren't many places in Denmark where you are not near the shop. You are always near some kind of shop. And it's, we need guys like you trying to when people say this, well, it's only 30 meters. When we need someone saying, well, how much is it in total? Because it always ends up in examples and saying 30 meters from a facade isn't that much. And if you live where I live, where every fourth or fifth house has a liberal company, private company, then receiving and delivering parcels would make them able to film their own property plus a good part of the public area around it. So it's not only in Strøget in Copenhagen that you're filmed. It's basically where people live. And I need to add all of these so you can see this is the total now situation with the new. So where people live, you are able to be filmed. Some of you might have seen the first version of my map, the one where Denmark was all yellow. But that was because someone, maybe a minister of law, accidentally said he thought maybe a couple of 100 meters would be appropriate. And at least that didn't go into the final text, because then we would have been, I'll just find it here, then we would have been a completely other place. We would have been here with this image. So this was the first, it would make sense, about 200 meters illustration. That's a bit to think about, because I totally agree. Stuff you can't visualize yourself, then it seems reasonable. 200 meters, that's not far, but in total it seems like quite a lot if you ask me. Let's jump to somewhere else, like this. Most of the Danes know this image. It's the king. He's been shot in the eye. So in conclusion, sometimes you need to help when he's blinded to help him see. But it's not over yet, and probably should carry on. And I think that was all for me today. Oh, and we're hiring. Thank you. But the field is a private property. Exactly. Yeah. So it's 30 meters from buildings onto public property. A maximum of 30 meters. A private property is your private property. But there are no buildings on the field. No, but you can film your private property as far as I'm aware. So basically it's all yellow? Basically everything owned by either a municipality, a private person, or the government is all yellow. That's a philosophical question. Yeah. Embassies. No. Yeah. Well, they're owned by someone too, who maybe don't care about the rules. But yeah, basically that's the point. So it's how far you're allowed to film on someone else's territory. You're never allowed to film into private property, for instance. You're not allowed to film people that are naked in their garden and so forth. But the first all yellow map is basically if you count out anything municipal, anything private, anything governmental, then you don't have much of Denmark. Actually, I don't know of places in Denmark that aren't owned by those three entities. I think it's quite a base in law that anything newly discovered is owned by the king. So if you find some new spot, then it would probably be the government's responsibility to film you there when needed. I'm sure that Anders told me I have to register my cameras because I have cameras myself. So I think the list is held privately by the police. But you can make your own donation by telling, isn't that true? You can go register yourself if you're a business. Yeah. Donate your fine cameras to the police by volunteering on the list. Or actually, I think you're supposed to do it now. But I wouldn't deem it plausible that you would be able to get the list. They like the list. Yes?
More questions? Is all this data also accessible publicly via stuff like APIs and things?
Yes, yes.
Because I tried to get some information for open data from Denmark from the Danish Meteorological Institute.
Yeah.
And they offered me this data via some sort of centralized.
Yeah.
What is it called and what does it do? We also work with them?
Yeah, we do. Actually, the Meteorological Institute of Denmark only recently opened their data, and it's in small steps because the fear is that their public API will break down and critical infrastructure will be harmed if we don't know. So if anything breaks down, so they're building a free version of it now. And apparently lightnings are now free. So if it was lightnings you were looking for, they should have been publicized or published last week. Yeah, it's they are opening small parts. It's really, you have to also sometimes really give out credit where it's credit's due. Most of the public admin guys I work with are very interested in people using the data. So they're trying with baby steps and seeing, learning when things break and when they don't. So the DMI will have, as far as I'm aware, will have all their data freely accessible via APIs from the 1st of February next year, I think it is.
Yes. Anyone else? Let's see.
Thank you.